with our flat colors in place, we're now going to do some shading and detail. And to do that, we need to mix some shading hues. So let's get started. We're going to start with the red here. And I want to go ahead and create a red shading hue. So we're just going to sample the red here. And we'll go into the controls. And I want to create a muted value of this red that's going to work good in the context of shading. Now, I've covered this in how I approach this kind of detail in Illustrator on the desktop, and it's the same principle, even though Fresco is an RGB environment when it comes to color, not CMYK. We're going to use the same general type of principle. So we're just going to adjust the values here. And the first value, 8, we'll keep that in place. But on the value for saturation, we want to desaturate this. So I'm just going to grab the slider and move it down until I think right about there. You can see it's muting that value of this hue. And now, in terms of the brightness, I don't want the brightness as much as it is right now. So we'll go ahead and drag that down as well. And I think right about there is fine. So you can see it's darkened that muted value of the red, and that's what we want. So let's go ahead and go to the vector brush here. And all I'm going to do is just draw out a swatch. Make sure we're on the right layer here. Draw out a swatch like this, and then we can fill it. So this is the color, so you can see this compared to the red to the left, and that's going to work well for shading. So all we're going to do now is we're going to create a new layer above our red layer here. So we'll add that layer here, and I'm just going to name this one Red Shading. Like that. Click done. We can collapse that. And with this color we created with the vector brush on that level, we're just going to draw in some shading. So this is where I'll want to zoom in on content like this circle on the front here. And in terms of the shading, I think if the light source is coming from the top down, I think we want to do it something like this. And again, we're just drawing this on a layer below the outline. Like that. We can grab the paint bucket and fill in that shape. And you might be looking at this going, well, that looks kind of horrible. And it does until we make some adjustments. So we're going to go ahead and open up this. And we're going to go, open up. We're on the layer we're drawing the shading. And we want to apply a blend mode to this. So we're going to go up to the settings here, and you can see blend mode shows up under the layer name. Right now it's normal, so we're going to select multiply. I really don't like how they have photographs here. I don't think it represents it very well. They need to improve that, in my opinion. But we're going to use multiply, and you can see how it darkens that color. That's nice. But we want to adjust that. We don't want that specific shading to be that dark. And so we've set multiply, so it's multiplying with the base color of red underneath it. And I think it works good in that respect. But we need to adjust the opacity. Now, when you're in Illustrator on the desktop, that is, you could select a shape like the shading we just drew there if you're using the blob brush in Illustrator, for example, and you could adjust the opacity for that object alone. Well, the way it works in Fresco, and this is why I'm organizing these layers with shading and flat colors on their own layer, because to adjust the opacity, you want to just adjust the layer opacity here. So everything I draw on this layer will utilize the same opacity and the same blend mode settings. So I think that'll be fine since we're organizing it by layers. So I'm going to adjust this by just dragging it over, and we'll try 50, half the value. And you can see that looks pretty good, maybe just a little darker. So we'll go 55 like that. And now we can go ahead and close this. We're still on the same layer. Go back to the brush, and we're going to add some more shading. So if the light's coming from the top down, this is creating the illusion of volume at the base, and then it would also have a shadow area, kind of like this, at the top as well. Kind of like that. So that's all I'm going to do is go into all these different areas. If we go up here, maybe this is where the shadow is. Kind of like that. We go here on this one. And we'll just do the shadowing kind of like this. And I'll fill these like that. The little dot. Just do shadowing. When it's small, I'll just draw in the whole shadow, kind of like that. On this little detail. Like that, and we'll fill it in. Kind of like that. You can see I have some of the teal peeking in there, so that's where I grab the eraser tool. I'd find the teal layer, which I believe it's right here, and just erase that to fix it. Make sure we're still on the shading layer now. I'll go to this. Something like that. I think this one could be completely dark. Like that. We'll do this. Like that. And this is a good time to put on an awesome audiobook and just kind of zone out, or music as you're doing this. So the same principle is going to apply to all the various colors, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. So you take the base color and you mute it, and then you're going to create a layer. In this case, I create a layer for each of the base colors, and it's the shading layer. And on certain hues, like the lighter colors, especially like yellows and stuff, I'll go at a lighter tone for, I'll still multiply, but I'll go with the lighter tone of opacity, just because I don't, you run the risk of it getting kind of dirty looking rather than a nice kind of rich shading hue. And that's kind of where I've suggested to Illustrator, you know, it's been 30 years and they haven't added any new blend modes. It'd be great if they added a shading blend mode so you could use that shading blend mode on any layer, on any object that is, to do shading, and then it would give you controls to adjust intensity and value, and you could get a lot more realistic shading inside of Illustrator. But it's like deer in headlights every time I try to explain that to an engineer. I even mocked up a diagram that kind of shows what I'm talking about. And my argument is, you go out in nature, if you look at a bush, and the bush might have, brown and green because of the foliage, and maybe there's blossoms on the tree and they're pink and yellow or whatever. All those are different colors, but when a shadow cascades over all those various colors, it's not the exact same level of shading on each because of the color value. It's kind of falling over. And that's what I'm talking about. It'd be really cool to have a shading blend mode. But I'm not a coder, so I don't know if it's possible. I think it is. I think they could do that. But once again, when you have engineers who are developing software they don't even use, they're never going to think that way. But I guarantee if they did that, users would love it, because it's definitely a pain point in certain respects to coloring. So that's how I go through and I do all the shading, in this case for the red. Now, I'm not going to walk through that on all the colors. I'm just going to go ahead. Here's the teal. We can turn that color on so you can see what it looks like without and with, without and with. I think it adds a lot. We'll turn the green on. We'll turn this kind of orange color on. We'll go up here to the purple, turn purple on, turn the yellow on, turn the blue on, and the pink. And this is kind of the lime green. We'll turn that on. And you can see how all of that shading in here kind of brings a nice volume to the artwork. And that's why I did it. Now, to do highlights, it's the easiest of all things. So we're going to click on this layer, and we're just going to change the color to white. And then we'll adjust the opacity. But let's go ahead and focus on the top here. So if the light's coming from the top down, we might draw it like kind of like this. Maybe it trails off out of the edge as we get down below. You can't see it because it's behind the outline there. We'll go here, then we'll come back in. Oops, I kind of goofed that part up. I'll fix it. Go like this, and we end it here. So if you ever kind of mess up, just grab the eraser. We can erase it here. Maybe we want it to just go like that. And if I want to add to it, I can go back up here and rank that part. I think that looks better. And we can fill this. And so that's the highlight. I think we can improve this area here. That looks better. That's at 100%. So what I would want to do is go to the settings, and I just adjust the opacity. And based off of, how obvious you want it, you can just go ahead and adjust it so you can see there. Let's go to half. I think that looks pretty good, but I think I'll even go maybe up to 55. Close it, and that's how I do the highlights. And I do that everywhere. So let's go and turn this off, and I'll turn this layer on, and this has all the highlights for all the colors like that. And I think this came out pretty cool. if I wanted to keep this artwork all in Fresco on my iPad Pro, I could do the background as well and call it good. But I want to do some specific things for the background that are best done in Adobe Illustrator on the desktop. So remember, if you have any questions about what I documented in this specific movie, please leave a comment or ask a question, and I'll be happy to answer it.